I really like Persona. Yeah, who would have guessed? But I also really love Shin Megami Tensei. And despite the amount of overlap between the two series, not enough of one side has experienced the other. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong to just prefer one over the other. I'm just saying, the number of people who have played Persona but not any other title under Atlus's belt is a bit concerning. I could get into Atlus titles outside of Megami Tensei, because those are worth your time too. But for the purposes of this video, we're sticking to just Mega 10, since it has the most in common with Persona. So without further ado, let's address the first question that's probably on your mind. Now, where to begin? The short answer to this question would probably go something like, oh my god, who cares, it doesn't matter, just pick one. But that's not very helpful, and it makes for a pretty boring video. But then I realized, wait, I can just say stuff on the internet, and people will really care for some reason. So the real answer to this question depends on several factors. Basically, it depends on what kind of Persona fan you are. Non-derogatory, by the way. Why do you enjoy Persona? Those reasons will likely affect which Mega 10 games you'll jive with. Sure, I can give my own personal anecdotes all I want, but that doesn't make it the optimal path for everyone. I also didn't really plan my route either, I was mostly just playing it by ear. And honestly, you could probably get away with doing the same, but in case you're just the type of person who really needs a push in the right direction, okay, sure, I'll lend you a hand. But just take everything I say with a grain of salt here. First, let me get into some quick gameplay tips. I don't know, man, just get good. Okay, in all seriousness though, most SMT games also operate on rewarding the player for striking weaknesses or scoring critical hits. However, SMT takes things a step further by punishing the player for missing or having their attacks blocked. If the attack is repelled or drained, then all press turns are lost, period. This sounds pretty harsh, but remember that the same rules apply to the enemy as well. So by nullifying enemy attacks, you're rewarded with being attacked less overall. If you have one demon weak to an attack while the other one blocks it, the block takes priority over the weakness. So having a diverse demon stock with different resistances and weaknesses really pays off. Not all Megami Tensei games have turn-based reward mechanics, but it's still a good thing to have a varied team to cover more ground either way. Speaking of demons, SMT is what pioneered demon negotiation, which would later be included in the Persona series. But convincing demons to join you isn't the only thing it's useful for. Escape from battle isn't guaranteed, so a good way to ensure a safe escape is to talk to demons you already have in your party. In some games, the encounter will just end right there. In others, maybe just that specific enemy in the group will leave. Either way, it's a nice safety measure if you're faced with a crowd of enemies you're not sure you can handle. When you enter a new area, recruit as many of the demons there as you can. Having more demons that you can encounter there already in your party will make escape from battle much easier. Plus, the fusion fodder is nice to have. Save often. I'm sure you don't really need to be told that one if you've played any Persona game before 5. Be cognizant of when your last save was before you do anything risky. If you just learned a skill or got a really useful item, save immediately. You do not want to experience the feeling of unlearning a skill or needing to grind the money to repurchase an expensive item again. Lastly, and probably the most common tip you'll hear, is use buffs and debuffs. In SMT, you can increase or decrease stats by multiple stages, so they're much more potent here than in Persona. It's also a good idea to have skills like Dekaja and Dekunda too, so you can instantly cancel buffs applied to the enemy or debuffs applied to you. These can make or break whether you survive a boss fight or not, so make sure you always have them spread across your party. That's about all you really need to hear from me. Anything else will be explained by the games themselves well enough. Now onto the real meat of this video, and probably the harder question to answer. What game to start with? I actually ended up dipping my toes into SMT long before I would even touch Persona 1 or 2. If you're someone who has only played Persona 3, 4, and 5 so far... Oh, wait, never mind. Hold up, I have to clarify something here. I can't just say Persona 3, 4, and 5 and expect everyone to be on the same page here. Every one of those titles has multiple versions, and most of them kind of appeal to different crowds. Hell, depending on when you're watching this video, you might have already played the Persona 4 remake. Okay, let me start over. If you're someone who has only played Persona 3 Reload, Persona 4 Golden, and or Persona 5 Royal, don't worry. There are plenty of modern entries with the current gen level of quality of life you might be looking for. You guys make it really hard not to sound condescending. Something I've realized after making videos for 5 years is that a lot of Persona fans aren't necessarily fans of RPGs. Especially the ones that started with the newer entries. For a good amount of these people, Persona was their gateway into the genre as a whole. This makes it kinda difficult to point people in the right direction with Megaten, you know, the turn-based RPG franchise. So already straight out the gate, I kinda have to cheat a little here by pointing to some non-Megaten titles. Although the examples I'll be giving are largely created by the same minds that gave you Persona and SMT. Metaphor ReFantasio. Yeah, I was nuts about this game when I first played it. It's got something akin to social links, but instead of powering up personas, these help advance the game's job class system. The game also has an in-game calendar system just like the modern Persona games. That's about where all the similarities with Persona end though. The game isn't localized entirely in one city like Persona games typically are. Metaphor has you traveling the country, and you can take on quests that can introduce dungeons and other spectacles in the surrounding area. These things will also consume time though, so there's another layer to the time management aspect aside from the character bonds. The bonds in Metaphor, however, are a lot less demanding in terms of maxing them out. This is likely to allow the player more time to explore the more RPG-esque features of the game. The same minds behind Persona 3, 4, and 5 are also the ones behind this game, with Katsura Hashino as director, Shigenori Soejima as the head of art direction, and Shoji Meguro composing the music. If you end up enjoying the gameplay of Metaphor, then I think the next best step would probably be Digital Devil Saga, as a lot of the battle mechanics in Metaphor are adapted from this game, with a much bigger focus on elemental specialties rather than archetypical battle rules. Although, as of the making of this video, Digital Devil Saga has only ever been released on the PlayStation 2. It also has those dreaded random encounters that everyone hates, but I'd suggest taking advantage of the encounter rate to devour more of your enemies to speed up mastering your mantras, which will in turn help you obtain more skills. From there, you should have a good grasp on the press-turn battle system in both of these games, in which case you're definitely ready for a mainline SMT. And from there, you can just sort of branch out however you want. After a certain point, the games just become too diverse in nature for any super consistent path. Though I understand that, realistically, any new fans hopping on within the past couple years may not have access to the older systems a lot of the Megaten library is stuck on. But there are still plenty of games on modern systems to tackle, such as Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, the still relatively new Raito remaster, and I guess you could play Soul Hackers too, I won't stop you. If you're looking for Switch games in particular, there's Tokyo Mirage Sessions, although most of the connections to the Megaten franchise will likely go over your head if you haven't already played one. It's pretty standalone even by Megaten standards, all things considered. Another very standalone title I'd consider pretty removed from Megaten is Catherine. It's not even an RPG, but I guess you could very loosely liken the ongoing subplots with the regulars at the bar to adult social links, as you do have to go out of your way to advance those. Again, it's made by the Persona guys, if that means anything to you. It has choices that affect your alignment. Other than that, it's pretty much an entirely different beast. I just wanted to mention it because I think the game is cool. If you're a fan of Persona 1 and or 2, you've probably already played an SMT game. And if you haven't yet, I am genuinely surprised. I guess for you, the question of where to start largely depends on what kind of Persona 1 or 2 fan you are. If you're the type of fan who just hates modern Atlus games, I'm not sure if I can really recommend anything post-Nocturne. Or maybe 3DS if we're being really generous here. But if you're someone who just likes the older Persona games and still enjoys the Persona series as a whole, you could honestly start wherever you want. No, really, if you dig the first-person dungeon crawling of Persona 1, you might have an easier time getting into some of the classic SMT games that are also first-person dungeon crawlers. Complexity of the dungeons may vary from game to game, but hey, you get a similar vibe from it. Honestly, the only wrong place for someone like you to start would be with games that aren't in a language you can read. I guess if you're a classic Persona fan looking to get into some classic SMT, you can't really go wrong with the original Shin Megami Tensei. It's not my favorite game in the world, but it's a really novel experience. It's impressive to look back at as a Super Famicom game. The way the game seamlessly transitions between its dungeon crawling gameplay into the random encounters, the pseudo 3D look of the first-person dungeon crawling perspective, they were making good use of the technology at the time. Okay, enough horsing around. Here's a general path to take if you're not partial towards either games on older systems or more modern ones. I'd say a good ballpark would be the PS2 or 3DS library of games. Both of these systems have some of the most well-acclaimed games in the franchise, and it's hard to argue not to just start with the best of the best. This general route is also assuming that you either have these older systems or know how to emulate them, because it's pretty inevitable the further you explore into Atlus's library. If you want to know where I started personally, I played Devil Survivor first. I'm not normally into tactical RPGs, but Devil Survivor is a lot lighter on those elements than others in that genre, at least from what I've been told. There's a much bigger emphasis on the extra turn mechanics by exploiting weaknesses and rolling crits, as well as taking advantage of demon race properties. But equally as important as the combat mechanics is the game's structure and how character interactions are handled. I think what struck a chord with me the most was the game's 7-day schedule, and how every event and character interaction will take up a little bit of time for that day. Realistically, you won't be able to see every single one available for that day, as many of them will become unavailable after a certain point. It takes a familiar idea that's kind of adjacent to social links, but applied to a drastically different context. Devil Survivor takes place during the Demon Apocalypse, thus the interactions are going to focus more on how the Tokyo lockdown is affecting people's lives and the people they care about. It's distinct enough to stand on its own, especially in the gameplay department, but has enough familiar aspects that I think Persona fans can appreciate. Alternatively, you can just jump straight into mainline, like genuinely, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, all these games have fusion, and if you've ever wanted to see the fruits of your labor for more than one fusion result at a time, or see how well multiple can synergize with each other in a team, you'll get a real kick out of SMT3 Nocturne and SMT4. In terms of which of the two you'd like more, it really depends on what you care more about. Nocturne has the better boss fight lineup, while 4's got lots of side quests and a more expansive overworld if you're into that. The same mentality would apply if you ended up playing Vengeance first. Whichever aspects you liked about Vengeance will largely decide whether you end up liking Nocturne or 4 more. Either way, they're both solid games in my eyes, and you can't really go wrong with either of them. I know another thing that's kind of holding Persona players back from SMT is the difficulty that the series is often hyped up for. But it's never really clear how hard just from hearing so many people say it, which might lead you to assume the worst. If you're someone who has extensively played through the Persona games, you can handle it. If I had to force a false equivalency, I'd say Nocturne is about as challenging as Persona 3 or 4 on the PS2. And if you've happened to play those games on their respective hard modes, then you can definitely handle Nocturne. SMT4 is a bit more volatile with its difficulty. In some ways, it's a lot easier than Nocturne, but in other ways, you might actually be more prone to death. A lot of it has to do with Force Smirk mechanic, which adds another degree of randomness to the combat. It can either work greatly in your favor or the enemy's. But considering that 4 allows you to save your game anywhere, and the game even lets you pay Maka to respawn right where you left off, it's pretty reasonable. But wait, what about Strange Journey? Yeah, I know, I still haven't played it yet. When will I play it? I don't know, there are other things I'm interested in playing at the moment, but I suppose I'll have to play it at some point. How about I give myself a deadline and say if I reach 75,000 subscribers, I will have to play it. I won't promise to make a dedicated video on it, but I will at the very least be able to talk about it in actual detail in these more tangenty videos. But of course, the best part of the Megami Tensei series is the variety. The 3DS games certainly got me to dabble a bit more in genres I'm not quite used to. Like I mentioned earlier, Devil Survivor introduced me to tactical RPGs. If I ever pick Path of Radiance back up and finish it, just know that you have Devil Survivor to thank. Soul Hackers is pretty well regarded among the classic dungeon crawler megatens. And hell, if you're kinda weird like me and you liked Persona Q, you might find an appreciation for Soul Hackers and the other classic Megaten games. In terms of Megaten's PS2 library, the best you'll get is Digital Devil Saga 2, and the worst it'll ever get is Raida 1. And you can honestly do much worse. I would never call any of the games in either of these two eras downright awful. But of course, there's plenty of variety and experimentation outside of these two systems. Once you've gotten a pretty good taste with what I've suggested so far, the rest is really up to you, and where to jump to next really all just depends on how experimental you're feeling. Are you in the mood for a traditional fantasy RPG? What about SMT, but it's Pokemon? Have you ever wanted to try an RTS? Okay, that last one might be a big ask, but it's something you can do. The only real limit is your curiosity. And a language barrier. But even discounting the games without English translations, you've still got plenty of ground to cover. Hell, I haven't even played half these games yet, but I was able to find plenty to like from what I have experienced. That's the main point I wanted to get across in this video. You're bound to find something new and interesting, and you're bound to find something you'll like. Hopefully. Satisfaction not guaranteed. If you've made it to the end of this video, thanks for watching. No, seriously, some weird stuff's been going on with YouTube apparently, and it's causing YouTubers across the board to receive a significant drop in views. So you simply taking the time to watch this video means way more now than it ever did before. If you know someone who might like or need this video, share it with them. Genuinely, I would love for more of the Persona player base to get into the wider Megami Tensei franchise. Special thanks to all my current channel members and Patreon supporters. They ran the whole 5 miles and even further to support my content, and I am truly grateful for that. It's $1 forever for detailed updates on upcoming videos, sneak previews, yearly thumbnail collections, and whatever other goodies I can come up with. If you stuck it out till the end, I'll see you again soon, hopefully.